Getting known, so said Crap in his last tape, and so say I, little by little, thanks to friends of the word and literature like John Madera. And I thank him for this invitation to read to you from a novel published last year by Bellevue Literary Press, The ICE HARP, which was the 10th in in my American novel series. The 11th was published this month, the 12th next year, and that'll complete the cycle. And many thanks to John. Many thanks to those of you who felt strongly enough about my novel, my work, to have recommended me for the Big Other Fiction Prize. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to read. And forgive me if I keep my eyes fixed on the page. I know it's impolite and not what we readers are supposed to do, to acknowledge the audience, but I find that I'm likely to lose my place in the reading if I glance up at you. So I hope you enjoy the next 8 to 10 minutes, and again, it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to speak to you. I leave the pond to Henry Thoreau's ghost and hunt for the place in the woods where he built his cabin, when youth sat bravely and lightly on him as God does on the seminarian. I taste ashes on my tongue, and hear again the death knell rung for my brothers Edward and Charles, my dear first wife Ellen, my sweet son Wally. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. What earthly use is philosophy or poetry if it can't make a man any less afraid of death? What good is a thought or a verse whose author is beggared by time, and by time is turned into dust? A poetical conceit for corruption, which is itself a euphemism for rot. I find the cairn of stones brought by pilgrims visiting the shrine of their wood god. After Henry left it for good, his hut was carted off to the Clark place, near the opening of the old Carlisle road, where it fell to ruin. Nothing remains of it except the brick chimney, hearthstone, and cellar, which becomes the grave of a house left to stand empty until walls and roof tumble in and are shrouded by dead leaves. House you were born in, friends of your springtime, old man and young maid, days toil in its guerdon, they are all vanishing, fleeing to fables, cannot be mourned, can only be mourned. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men. Ecclesiastes. Above my head universes are being spun of silken threads. Each star is a drop of rain, glistering in the light shed by the moon, arisen after a storm has gone. A man or a woman does not require infinite spaces. Though larger than Prince Hamlet's walnut shell, Thoreau's meager kingdom by the pond was sufficient for his mind to rove the farthest planets, the nearest nest of spiders, and the aphids on the gooseberries. If a moment is a concentrated eternity, what are the millions upon millions of moments that constitute our lives? To live a single moment should be enough. To suffer more than a moment would be to be bound like Ixion to a perpetually turning wheel. Carlyle's words come back to me, as they sometimes will even now, as a bulb will thrust up through an April snow. The withered leaf is not dead or lost. There are forces in and around it, though working in inverse order, else how could it rot? To and fro we are driven by what we cannot see. We mistake an action for evidence of progress, forgetting that a reaction must retard it. Like the bedazzled gaze fixed on a mesmerist's watch, our attention turns from simplicity to excess, from romanticism to classicism, till we are asleep. How hard it is to stay awake, how hard to awaken. I remember the afternoon my wife Lydia and I feted Nathaniel and Sophia Hawthorne, who were at the time living in Salem, where Nathaniel was employed by the Customs Service. We played croquet on the lawn. He called it Newton's game, since the mallet imparted to the wooden ball a force equal to that which struck it. In an ideal world, I said, the ball would roll on forever. Ah, but it's matter that makes the game interesting, countered Nathaniel, whose idealism had been coarsened by a year of shoveling manure during the noble experiment in communal living at Brook Farm, which failed, and by the famous might that lurks in reaction and recoil do we go about our days and nights. Why doesn't the universe inside us blaze with an effulgence equal to that of the glorious universe that impinges everywhere on us? What matter weighs increasingly on our inward stars until gravity, which opposes our transcendent thoughts, has its way with them? We don't know, say the trees that shiver in their nakedness. Neither do we, say the stones that iconoclastic boys shatter stained glass windows with. Nor we, say the night birds, whose fierce cries splinter the bones in my chest. Henry knew the names of trees, plants, birds, animals, rocks, minerals, stars. He knew that to name is to enlarge our understanding of the universe, and by doing so become a perfect natural man. By the language of things do we attain the summit of what is possible for our kind. I won't be a burrowing thing, a rock, a tree, no matter that it is evergreen. I would not be one of the brightest stars named by Hippocrates. I would not even be the astronomical proof of the existence of God. I would be a man, standing on the ground in his boots even if they pinch. To be a proper man or woman is more difficult than is commonly supposed. Sound assaults my ears dismayed. I mistake it for Gabriel's horn summoning me to stand in judgment before the throne for impiety. But it's only the Fitchburg locomotive raising the alarm to scare livestock from the tracks. Once I sued the company after sparks from one of its locomotives set fire to my woods. I lost. I would have needed young Mr. Lincoln to win a case against the vested interests. Henry hated the railroads, but he was no Luddite who attacked factories at the onset of the Industrial Revolution. Except his words could be bent to his purpose, he wrote that if some have the pleasure of riding on a rail, others have the misfortune to be ridden upon. When Sam Staples asked what he meant by throwing apples at a passing Baldwin locomotive, Henry replied that he was feeding the Minotaur in the hope that it would choke. Like a monk telling his beads, I pronounced the names of apples growing in my orchard: Baldwin, Golden Russet, Gravenstein, Spitzenberg, Winesap, Jonathan, Hightop, Bellflower, Tolman Sweet, Dutch Codlin, Spovsavine. How very lovely are the names of things. Walt Whitman knows that better than anyone. I leave the woods behind and follow the Fitchburg tracks that lead to Concord. I stopped to rest at the fair ground set in the corner of the field, where the rails come near the Sudbury River, whence Henry and John once sailed on to the Concord River, and thence on the Merrimack when they were green and careless. I think I see the two brothers rowing once again the boat they built and named the Muscataquid. Henry, John Thoreau, where are you boys off to? To the White Mountain to seek God. Let me go with you. Henry laughs. There's no room in my boat for three such giants as we. Then he and his brother take up once more the Canadian boat song, as they did many times in life. Row, brothers, row, the stream runs fast, the rapids are near, and the daylight's past. I want to see his face, which I have seen only in his handiwork. Later, say the trees, soon, say the stones. It's almost time, say the birds. A blue and green boat has passed. Beyond the bend, the brothers will see the great stone face scowling eastward from Franconia Notch. Is God's face made of granite too? Has he hardened his heart against us, or does he weep glaciers over his fractious children? Was the fire that burned Sodom and Gomorrah only an accident caused by his scalding tears? Twice I heard him call me. The first time I was at the seminary, when I ascended the pulpit at Boston's Second Church. Then, too, I heard him. But the theology was cold mutton. I could find no pulse or warmth in the corpus given me to teach. Far better that a man examine himself than listen to another man's sermons. The original is scribbled over with 1,000 years of exegesis. I am become a little man of little faith. The firmament no longer shines. Fled is that music, sang Keats, who was not born for death, but he died notwithstanding. Asleep in my house is Christ, as he has come again, a footsore fugitive, a black man who could not finally turn the other cheek. He is hiding from Calvary in my dead friend's old bed. I hope that when morning comes he'll have gone. I consider walking to Monument Square at the center of Concord, but decide against it. At this hour the talkative dead will be recounting the Civil War battles in which they died. I fear my somber mood will not withstand the weight of all their sorrows. The weight of sorrow is real, and so it was for me when I fled to Italy in the hopes of easing my grief for the death of my first wife, Ellen. Even as the boat steamed through the Strait of Messina toward Palermo, passing between Scylla and Charybdis, I was weighed down by a portmanteau in which I packed unwittingly the portion of Ellen that remained to me my memories of her. I carried it in Palermo's public gardens, on its streets and lanes shadowed by the city's 400 churches, and in the Capuchin vaults, whose damp nitered walls are lined with skeletons clad in burial clothes reduced by time to rags. At Messina, I hugged that invisible portmanteau up Etna's steep, volcanic slopes like a pilgrim on the moon. I was beyond consolation, even that promised in heaven. What did I care for the Christian or Muslim paradise when I had savored it in Concord, Massachusetts, with my bride? There is one birth, one baptism, and one first love. For many years I've lived with Lydian, my second wife, but never have I felt the strength of passion that I knew from my enchanting friend. First love left a splinter in my heart. Ellen, my own sweet girl. Thank you. And let me say thank you to Erica Goldman, publisher and editor at Bellevue Literary Press, who has given me the inestimable gift of publishing an entire cycle of works. The last, Eden's Clock, will be out next July, and that will complete it. Thank you, Eric, and thank you all the marvelous people who do so much for American literature and for all of us. Good night.